When I was a senior at seminary, one of the professors said, I'm convinced that you're going to spend most of your ministry dealing with death and dying.
That's Carroll Pickett, a man whose life illustrated his teacher's prediction, and then some. Pickett is the subject of the new IFC documentary At the Death House Door, co-directed by Steve James and Peter Gilbert, the filmmakers behind Hoop Dreams. This latest film is as subdued and terse as Hoop Dreams was exuberant and expansive. The style suits the subject. Pickett spent 16 years as a pastor at the Walls Unit in Huntsville, Texas. Death Row. At the Death House Door is the life story of Carroll Pickett, a man whose support of the death penalty initially seemed absolute. His grandfather was murdered. His father was a staunch supporter of capital punishment. In 1974, Pickett was called to counsel the families of prison employees held hostage in a riot and saw two of his parishioners murdered. Pickett swore that he would never return to Walls, but when he was asked to become a prison chaplain, he accepted, and found himself leading a choir comprised of felons.
And the word got around, so here these musicians started coming up to me and said, I want to join the choir. One of them was a backup singer for Don Ho. Another one was a former Supreme Court justice from Texas. And he could sing like an angel. They became so good that at Christmas of the first year, the director asked us to come across the street and sing for their Christmas party.
His involvement in the inmates' lives complicated his feelings about capital punishment. When the death penalty was activated again in Texas in 1982 in the form of lethal injection, Pickett, who would record his personal reactions to each execution on audio tape, witnessed the event with a mix of fascination and repulsion.
Nobody knew how a person would die with lethal injection. Warden said, we're just going to have to play it by ear. Preparations were made. And I was to check their veins. They wanted to know, were the veins good? I'm not a medical man.
James and Gilbert sketch an array of fascinating personalities, all connected in some way to death row. At the center of the film is Pickett's relationship with Carlos de Luna, a young man wrongly convicted of murdering a gas station attendant and sentenced to die. De Luna's execution changed a lot of lives, particularly that of his sister, Rose Roton. She hired lawyers to try to save her brother's life, to no avail.
The attorneys we hired told me, your brother committed the crime. He did it. Then I started having doubts. And that's what hurts.
The most conflicted character is Pickett himself. He explains that for the duration of his stint as a death row pastor, he was caught in an impossible bind. If he told the convicts he believed in capital punishment, he would have had trouble gaining their trust. On the other hand, if Pickett voiced his own mounting doubts about the death penalty to his colleagues, he could have been fired for being in conflict with his sworn duties. So he kept his opinions to himself. It's clear that the execution of Carlos de Luna weighs heavily on him. De Luna, who grew up poor and was neglected by an absent stepfather, grew close to Pickett and once asked if he could address the pastor as Daddy. Pickett says there was no one incident that changed him from a supporter of capital punishment into an opponent, and the filmmakers do him the courtesy of seeming to take him at his word. All the same, though, both the film and Pickett's own frank recollections leave no doubt that de Luna's death was the pivotal event in his career, perhaps his life. This becomes unnervingly clear in a sequence in which Pickett's now adult children interview him about his career.
I'm sorry, but I had a glass of wine. I'm asking questions. Is there a particular moment in time where you've had the revelation that this is wrong?
I mean, it was a process. You know, I'd been taught by your grandfather, hang 'em high, hang 'em fast, kill 'em all, you know, because of his daddy. As we go on, I started seeing mentally retarded people that didn't know what was going on. Then when a guy's getting ready to die and he says, okay, you know, all I want is my Crayolas and my color book. He didn't know what was going on. And when they started hurting, like Carlos de Luna, the drugs didn't work. I had to go seek therapy. And I had to go seek therapy because I thought I'd failed the kid. And then it got to be where it became an internal thing. a moral, spiritual, biblical thing.
This is an unobtrusively beautiful film whose poetic touches don't read as such until you've seen it twice. Without pointlessly aestheticizing people or locations, the movie features countless images that fortify the story and themes while managing to be beautiful in and of themselves. The shadow of a tree on a prison wall. A close-up of raindrops hitting flooded pavement. Shots of Carlos's sister Rose jogging, her determined face combining with pertinent narration to illustrate one woman's relentless push to learn from the past and better herself.
And by Carlos going through this, I made myself a promise that I wasn't going to be this uneducated Mexican person. And that pushed me to better my life.
And throughout the film, the innumerable shots of crucifixes. At first, these shots seem meant to remind us of Pickett's duties as a man of God. But later in the movie, after they've piled up in our imaginations, the filmmakers bring in a second set of recurring images that magnify and ironically comment upon the first.
Many of the inmates who were strapped down with their arms spread out said, "I feel like I'm on a cross." It is hard to tell anybody, even the meanest person, it is time to go. We're 10 steps away from the gurney.